12 seconds. That's all it took. 12 seconds to end the career of Nazi Germany's most feared fighter ace. A man who had shot down over 300 Allied aircraft. A legend in the Luftwaffe. Untouchable, unstoppable. Until he wasn't. On April 24, 1945, in the skies over Germany, an American P-51 Mustang pilot did the impossible. He caught the Reich's top ace completely off guard. A quick burst of .50 caliber fire. 12 seconds, and one of Hitler's greatest pilots was gone. But here's the thing. The American pilot who did it, he was just 23 years old. He'd only been in combat for a few months, and the kill. It wasn't even confirmed for decades. This is the story of Lieutenant Urban Ben Drew, the young American fighter pilot who walked into legend without even knowing it. The man who shot down Major Georg Peter Eder, one of the deadliest aces in Luftwaffe history. And it all happened in 12 seconds. April 1945. The war in Europe is almost over. The Third Reich is collapsing. Berlin is surrounded. Hitler is hiding in his bunker. The Luftwaffe, once the most powerful air force in the world, is a shadow of its former self. But don't let that fool you. Even in these final days, the Luftwaffe still has teeth. Veterans, aces, pilots who've been fighting since 1939. Men who know every trick in the book. Men who've survived years of brutal air combat. And among them, one name stands above the rest. Major Georg Peter Eder. Eder wasn't just any pilot. He was a killing machine. By April 1945, he had over 78 confirmed kills. Some sources say more. He'd flown hundreds of combat missions. He'd been shot down 17 times. 17 times. And every single time, he survived. He'd been wounded 12 times. Lost an eye, suffered burns, broken bones, but he kept flying, kept fighting, kept killing. The Allies knew his name. They feared him. But on April 24, 1945, Eder's luck ran out. And the man who ended his reign, a kid from Michigan who'd barely been in the war long enough to grow a proper mustache. This is that story. The American kid from Michigan, let's rewind a bit. Urban Leonard Drew was born in 1922 in Wingdale, New York, but he grew up in Detroit, Michigan. His friends called him Ben. He was a regular kid, played sports, worked odd jobs, dreamed of flying. When the war broke out, Ben knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. He wanted to fly. So in 1942, he enlisted in the Army Air Forces. He trained hard, really hard. He learned to fly at T-6 Texans, then P-40 Warhawks. Then, finally, the P-51 Mustang, the best fighter plane in the world. By late 1944, Ben Drew was ready for combat. He was assigned to the 375th Fighter Squadron, part of the 361st Fighter Group based in England. The 361st was known as the Yellow Jackets because of their bright yellow nose markings on their P-51s. Ben arrived in Europe in January 1945, 3 months before the war would end. He was 22 years old. Now, you might think that arriving so late in the war meant Ben would miss all the action. That the Luftwaffe was already beaten. That he'd just be flying patrols over empty skies. You'd be wrong, because in early 1945, the Luftwaffe was desperate. And desperate men are dangerous. Hitler had ordered his pilots to keep fighting no matter what. He'd introduced the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. Fast, deadly, almost impossible to catch in a traditional dogfight. The Luftwaffe also had veterans. Pilots like Eder, who'd been fighting for years. Pilots who knew how to kill. And in April 1945, the skies over Germany were about to become a killing field. Ben Drew had no idea what he was flying into, but he was about to find out. The mission on April 24, 1945. April 24, 1945. It's a cold, clear morning in England. The 361st Fighter Group is preparing for a mission deep into Germany. Their target: enemy airfields. The Allies want to destroy what's left of the Luftwaffe on the ground. Ben Drew climbs into his P-51 Mustang. His aircraft is named Detroit Miss after his hometown. It's painted olive drab and silver. The yellow nose marking identifies it as part of the Yellow Jackets. Ben checks his instruments, his guns, his ammo. 6 50 caliber machine guns, 1,800 rounds total, enough to tear apart any enemy fighter. The mission briefing is simple: fly into Germany, strafe enemy airfields, destroy anything that moves, and watch out for jets. The Me-262s are fast, really fast, over 500 miles per hour. A P-51 tops out at around 430. If you see a jet, you don't chase it. You can't catch it. But if you catch one on the ground, you catch one taking off or landing. That's a different story. Ben takes off with his squadron. Dozens of P-51s form up over England, then turn east toward Germany. The flight takes about an hour. Ben watches the English Channel pass beneath him, then France, then the German border. As they cross into Germany, the radio crackles with warnings. Enemy fighters in the area. Stay alert. Ben scans the sky. Nothing yet. The squadron reaches their target: Akmer Airfield in northern Germany. It's a Luftwaffe base. Home to Me-262 jets and veteran fighter pilots. Ben and his wingman start their attack run. They dive toward the airfield. Strafing runs, machine guns blazing, bullets ripping into parked aircraft. Explosions, fire, chaos. But then something catches Ben's eye. Movement on the runway. An aircraft is taking off. Not just any aircraft. A Focke-Wulf FW-190. One of the Luftwaffe's best fighters. Fast, agile, deadly. And it's flown by someone who clearly knows what they're doing. Ben doesn't know it yet, but he's just spotted Major Georg Peter Eder. And the deadliest 12 seconds of the war are about to begin. The 12-second kill, okay. Let's set the scene. Ben Drew is at about 500 feet. Low, really low. He's just finished a strafing run on Akmer Airfield. His P-51 is screaming across the runway at over 300 miles per hour. And then he sees it. A Focke-Wulf FW-190 is taking off. Wheels just leaving the ground. Vulnerable. Now, here's the thing about catching an enemy fighter during takeoff. It's the perfect moment to attack. The pilot is focused on getting airborne. He's slow, he can't maneuver. He's a sitting duck. But it's also incredibly dangerous, because you're low. You're fast. And if you misjudge your speed or altitude, you're going to slam into the ground at 300 miles per hour. Ben doesn't hesitate. He banks hard toward the FW-190 lines up his shot. The German pilot sees him. Too late, Ben opens fire. 650 caliber machine guns roar to life. Tracers streak through the air. Bullets slam into the Focke-Wulf, the wings, the fuselage, the cockpit. 12 seconds, that's all it takes. The FW-190 shudders. Smoke pours from the engine. The pilot tries to pull up, tries to gain altitude, but it's over. The Focke-Wulf rolls to the right. The nose drops, and then it slams into the ground just past the end of the runway. Explosion, fireball. Gone. Ben pulls up hard, climbing away from the airfield. His heart is pounding. Adrenaline is pumping through his veins. He just shot down an enemy fighter, his first kill. But he has no idea who was flying that FW-190. No idea that he just ended the career of one of Nazi Germany's most feared aces, Major Georg Peter Eder, the man with 78 confirmed kills, the man who'd survived 17 shoot-downs, the man who'd fought on every front of the war. The man who was supposed to be invincible, shot down in 12 seconds. By a 23-year-old kid from Michigan. Who was Georg Peter Eder? So who was this guy? Who was Major Georg Peter Eder? And why does his death matter so much? Let's go back to the beginning. Georg Peter Eder was born on March 8, 1921, in Frankfurt, Germany. He joined the Luftwaffe in 1938, just before the war started. He was 18 years old. Eder trained as a fighter pilot, and he was good, really good. He flew his first combat mission in 1940 during the Battle of Britain. He was 19. Over the next 5 years, Eder flew on almost every front of World War II. The Battle of Britain, the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union, the Mediterranean, North Africa, the defense of Germany. He flew Messerschmitt Bf-109s, Focke-Wulf FW-190s, and in the final months of the war, even Messerschmitt Me-262 jets. By April 1945, Eder had 78 confirmed kills. Some sources say the number was higher, but not all were officially confirmed. 78 kills made him one of the top aces in the Luftwaffe. Not the highest pilots like Erich Hartmann had over 300, but Eder fought primarily in the West against American and British pilots. And those fights were brutal. But here's what made Eder truly legendary. He'd been shot down 17 times. 17 times. Most pilots don't survive one shoot-down. Eder survived 17. He'd been wounded 12 times. Lost an eye in 1944 when his canopy shattered during a dogfight. Suffered severe burns. Broken bones, concussions. He should have been dead a dozen times over. But he kept flying. He kept fighting. Because that's what Eder did. He was a warrior, a survivor, killer. The Allies knew his name. Intelligence reports tracked him. Pilots were warned about him. And on April 24, 1945, Ben Drew shot him down. But here's where the story gets even crazier. Eder didn't die. The survival and the mystery. When Ben Drew's bullets tore through Eder's Focke-Wulf, the plane was destroyed. No doubt about that. But Eder, he survived. Somehow, in the chaos of the crash, Eder managed to get out of the cockpit. He was badly injured. Burns, broken bones. But he was alive. German ground crew rushed to the wreckage. They pulled Eder from the burning plane. He was barely conscious, blood everywhere. They got him to a field hospital. The doctors worked on him for hours. They saved his life. But Eder's war was over. He was too injured to fly again. The Third Reich had only days left anyway. Hitler would commit suicide less than a week later. Germany would surrender on May 8, 1945. Eder spent the rest of the war in a hospital bed, and Ben Drew. He had no idea. When Ben returned to base after the mission on April 24th, he filed a combat report. He claimed one Focke-Wulf FW-190 destroyed. One kill. But the kill was listed as unconfirmed. Why? Because there was no gun camera footage. The P-51's gun camera had malfunctioned. There was no proof. Just Ben's word. And in the chaos of the final weeks of the war, unconfirmed kills were often forgotten. So for decades, Ben Drew didn't get official credit for shooting down Georg Peter Eder. He knew he'd done it. His squadron mates believed him. But the paperwork, the official records, nothing. It wasn't until years later, long after the war, that historians started digging into Luftwaffe records. They found Eder's flight logs, medical records, eyewitness accounts from German ground crew, and they confirmed it. On April 24, 1945, Major Georg Peter Eder was shot down while taking off from Akmar Airfield. His attacker, an American P-51 Mustang. Urban Ben Drew's kill was finally confirmed. Decades late, but confirmed. After the war, so what happened to these two men after the war? Let's start with Eder. Georg Peter Eder survived the war. He recovered from his injuries, though he never flew combat again. After Germany surrendered, he was held as a prisoner of war for a short time, then released. Eder went on to have a long life. He wrote books about his experiences. He attended veteran reunions. He even met with former Allied pilots, including some of the men who'd fought against him. Eder was respected, even by his former enemies. He was a skilled pilot, a warrior. But after the war, he became something else. A historian, a storyteller. He died in 1986 at the age of 65. But his legacy lived on. Stories of his incredible survival, his 78 kills, his 17 shootdowns, and the story of the day he was finally brought down by a young American pilot. Now, Ben Drew. After the war, Ben returned to the United States. He left the Army Air Forces and went back to civilian life.